But at any rate, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Nice to meet you as well.
So I'd love to begin our conversation with, you know, we're on the 4-year anniversary of this pandemic,
Yep.
and I'm sure it's bringing PTSD to a lot of people. But I'm curious, how did you survive that time period, and how did it subsequently change you?
How did I survive the pandemic? I look back at that time, honestly, as one of the best years of my life as an athlete. And I would never wish a pandemic on the world. I would always wish for that extra year of training. We were going in, it was an Olympic year for us, and softball had been out since '08. We were chomping at the bit. We were ready to go. We were in training camp. We had a planned 10-day break, and we didn't come back again for 10 months.
Wow.
And in that time, we all got extremely creative. We were all tested, obviously. Gyms were closing, and our whole world was thrown upside down. And yet, when we came back together 10 months later, all of us were so much better. Our team used every single thing, every single resource, every single moment that we could, and we surprised one another when we came back together. It was
Wow.
incredible. And so I think the toughest part of that time was the doubt that the Olympics would actually happen. They got delayed, and then news, media, everything kept pushing out, it's going to get canceled. It's going to get canceled. This has never happened before. And I finally had to say to my friends and family, please stop sending me those articles. I'm going to act like it's going to happen, because the biggest regret I could ever have in my life is not preparing, and
Yeah.
it happened.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was a very strange time.
Yeah.
But I left my career. I walked away from a job and was able to be a full-time athlete for the first time in my life. And it was such an incredible experience to have. I got exponentially better that year. I met incredible people, made amazing connections, played in the inaugural season of Athletes Unlimited professional softball, and came out of it a better athlete, a stronger person, had a deeper understanding of myself. And then thankfully the Olympics did happen, and the rest is history.
The weird thing about that time period, I remember, because I've been a sports fan my whole life, particularly baseball, is that I remember right before that happened, I was watching a hockey game with my son, and it was the St. Louis Blues, and a player had an aneurysm or was getting ready to, and it was like after the first period, and he collapsed, and the whole place went quiet, and they canceled the game. And I remember I was like, they just canceled the hockey game. And little did I know that everything that we would consider something that spectators would view and go to for the next year, if not longer, because athletics and music were like the two things that really just kind of were halted back. I mean, of course, the NFL and some other sports kind of opened up a little bit, but it was like those big gatherings just went away. And it's weird to think that the prior mentality was if you cancel anything for any reason, it's just very strange. And then it just became commonplace. So I would imagine as an athlete, that would have to build up some level of mental resilience and some level of appreciation. There would have to be a mixed bag of things that would make you stronger.
Absolutely. And I think the fact that we just kept saying when we got to Tokyo, it's happening, we're
Yeah,
here. And
yeah,
there had been that little seed of doubt in the back of our head the entire time. And finally, that sense of relief and that huge sense of appreciation for the fact that it was happening and soaking in every moment like we probably wouldn't have to the degree that we did. And I think for athletes everywhere, when things started kind of getting back to how it had been pre-pandemic with training and games, and there was that time period where everybody just appreciated it so much more.
yeah. So let me ask you this. Right here in 2024, if I was to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day, and one of the kids said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
I say I am a retired Olympian who has started her own business. Now I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a speaker and consultant. I get to travel the country impacting people with leadership, team culture, and mindset.
And those kids would probably just stop on the Olympian part and be like, wow, we get to see an Olympian. So let me ask you this. When you were in the third grade, was your dream to grow up to become an Olympian? What was your dream?
My dream, it's funny you asked that. I had a third grade teacher who asked us to write a letter to ourselves, and she mailed it to us years later. And
Wow.
I wrote in that letter, I want to be a professional athlete.
Wow.
And I drew myself in hockey gear wearing an NHL uniform because that's what I saw on TV.
Uh-huh.
And so that's what I wanted to be. And yeah, I'm still in touch with that third grade teacher, and it's so cool. What a cool project.
Yeah.
And to still, to get that, as I was just about to enter university when I received that letter, and just an amazing thing to say to myself, wow,
Yeah.
I dreamt of being a professional athlete since I was 8 years old. And a couple years ago, I was going through a box at my parents' house and pulled out some high school crap. And only two things did I keep from that box: my diploma and a autobiography that I'd written that was titled Future Olympian.
Wow. That's really
So
cool. Yeah.
yeah, the dream was there.
Yeah. I kind of remember that when I was a kid. There was really creative ways, almost like a time capsule of like capturing that time and revisiting it and all of that. So let me ask you this. How do you accumulate and evolve into that pedigree where you say not only are you going to be a professional athlete, but you're going to go to the highest stage in the world and be an Olympian? How did all those seeds get planted in you as a child, and how did it grow into who you are today?
I think my parents allowed me to try a bunch of sports. I think honestly, probably like most parents are like, what can we get this kid in to like take up some of her time? And just I fell in love with sport, and it was clear that that was going to be a passion for the rest of my life. And they gave me opportunity to meet Olympians and to go to camps that they were running and to actually get to be around these people. And I think it almost personified them for me. It allowed me to know and understand that real regular people can do this.
Yeah.
And although very few people do get the opportunity, it is a dream that I was able to see with my own eyes in person that these people had achieved. I was able to hold their medal from the Olympics and work with them on the ice and on the softball field and get that experience. So I think it almost just allowed my dream to become real because I could see it.
The thing that gets me about softball is that, I go and watch it, and there's a good friend of mine. We went and watched recently, maybe a year or two ago. And every time I watch it, I'm always like, how can this sport just stop after college? How is it that our society hasn't enabled this to become a professional thing? And what's your take on it? What do you see happening in the future? Do you see that taking place?
Yeah, I think there has been professional softball in the US for quite a while. And I think the biggest issue is a lack of marketing and a lack of exposure. And there have been many times where two leagues have existed at the same time. They don't necessarily work together. So we have our own sport battling our own sport for the top players, for media coverage, for all these things. And it it hasn't gotten to a space where it's flourished and it has gotten the attention like college softball has.
Yeah.
I think if the professional game was televised and marketed and followed the way that college softball is, it would be a completely different game. But I think the college softball world has done an amazing job of capturing the attention of the country, and professional softball hasn't done the same thing. I think largely because we're constantly battling ourselves.
So there you go, right there. I had no idea that that was happening. You know what's interesting here in Kansas City is that we just built a stadium, the first women's professional soccer stadium, the KC Current. And did you know? And they had their first game and they won it the other day. So you probably need Brittany Mahomes or Patrick to come in and tweet about it or put it out there because literally, I mean, it's a pretty momentous wave in sports right now to have that happen here locally. So it's pretty
Yes.
cool, And we've always had this riverfront in Kansas City, and it's always been this prime real estate place. So the fact that they finally did it, they finally have a team, they finally have a place to play, it's like all of it just kind of came together. So there's always hope out there, but I just see a lot of these girls out there playing this sport, doing all of this work that all of the male counterparts do. And I guess it's just like anything else. The whole equal pay, equal rights, all of those things. It's just I'm waiting for our society to catch up with itself.
Yes, it's that whole idea of if you build it, they will come, and you're seeing that, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, when the stadiums are built, when the teams are funded, it's incredible the following that comes.
So what if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one Olympic moment with your own eyes? Where are you going?
That is such an incredible question. I think because of my experience being in softball and my other passion being hockey, I think would be going back to watch my childhood idol, who was Vicky Sanahara, who played for Team Canada Hockey in the Nagano Olympics.
Okay. Right on. One of the first times I ever asked this question, somebody told me I want to go back to Lake Placid in 1980 and rewatch the game. And I was like, wait, hold on a second. Re what? He was there. And I was like, yeah, he was there. And the weird thing about that game, because I'm 51, so at that time I would have been pretty young, and I kind of remember it a little bit. No one in on the planet thought that we were going to win that game,
Yeah.
except those guys on the ice,
Yes. And that's all
right?
that matters at the end of
That,
the day.
right, exactly. So I don't know that I've seen the movie. I'd love to see it. Because they did make a movie about that, I believe.
Miracle.
Yeah. So, um, but being in broadcasting, that Al Michaels call is probably one of the most iconic calls of all time, you know. So, do you believe in miracles? But so let me ask you this. Overall, who's been a hero for you? Who has been the ultimate influencer and hero? Because you're obviously very highly driven. Who has been that for you?
I think I'd have to go back and say Vicky Sanahara, who I just mentioned I'd want to go back and watch. I think that she was just such a hardworking, humble, personable human, and being able to be influenced by her at a young age, I think that is a large reason that I became the athlete that I did, and even more the person. Every single interaction that I had with a fan, with a kid, just making sure that I had that same approach that she did of really connecting with them, and no matter what had just happened on the field, no matter how I was feeling, ensure that it was a positive experience for that person, because you never know what impact that could have on their life moving forward.
What was the feeling the first time you had someone call you over for an autograph? What did that feel like?
I think it was almost like a moment of, wait, do they really want my autograph? Like,
Right.
and but I think a real moment of pride for my parents, like
Yeah.
seeing the pride on their face, and they're snapping pictures of the moment because they have so much just pride and emotion in that moment. I think more so than me digging in, like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
do I deserve to be here?
Right. You know, the one thing that we see as civilians is that athletes have there's this great strength that goes into it that's very evident, but there's also this mental acuity. So what was the transfer like going from being a professional musician, or I mean, I'm sorry, not musician. I'm so used to jazz radio. I get lost sometimes. Being a professional athlete and crossing over to becoming an entrepreneur. Was it seamless? Were there growing pains? What was that like mental leap for you like?
Absolutely growing pains, and there still are for sure. But it's incredible every time I make some kind of connection from my sport life into the life of entrepreneurship, a light bulb goes off and something comes together that hadn't been coming together before. And I can give an example of that being when I go out to speak, it's like game day. And for the longest time, I wasn't thinking about it like that. And the minute I started thinking about it like that, I was like, wow, yes, I can get a good night's sleep before. I can prepare. I can be in a mindset and almost look at it as I don't have to feel pressure to get a bunch of emails done on that day. I don't have to feel like all those things that are always in the back of your head as an entrepreneur, and just focus on the performance, because that's what matters that day and that's what it is. And The other days are more like practice days where I'm getting doing kind of the monotonous stuff, answering those emails and following up on the little things that can get bogged down, and I can operate a little differently in that space. So every time I make a connection from my sport life, it's incredible how I'm like, why have I not been thinking about it this way? It's the same thing.
Yeah, right, exactly. I was just remembering a documentary that I just watched about the women's national soccer team when they won it back in the late 90s. All of that euphoria with Mia Hamm and the team. And I can't remember the name of the documentary, but um Billie Jean King was in it, and they were talking about pushing soccer and getting their own league and doing that. And they kept relying on her, and they kept kind of pushing. And she finally said, "Stop bringing me into it. You do it." And I keep thinking about just professional sport and softball becoming more prominent. It's like there almost needs to be like a face, something that gets pushed. Do you see that being the case where there's like one person, one movement, one thing that's going to make it happen?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. I think Athletes Unlimited I think they started in 2020. So this year will be the fifth season for softball, and it's still gaining traction.
Yeah.
I think people who know about it continue to word of mouth spread the excitement about it. They're starting to dive into different areas. They have a preseason that instead of doing everything out of Chicago every single year, they do a preseason out of a new place. So last year was San Diego. This year will be Wichita. And so they're working to get into different markets and to spread the word. And so is it Athletes Unlimited that is that entity that breaks that barrier? I'm not sure. Is it an athlete that has a big following? Maybe. I don't have the answer right now, but hopefully there is an entity, whether it's a person or an organization, that can get enough uh, of society to rally around softball and help grow the game.
I remember with Billie Jean, she played that dude. It was a big deal. It was kind of the
Hmm.
battle of the sexes, and she won. She destroyed him. I can't remember who that was, if he was just kind of a rich guy that made a big deal out of it. But it almost seems like, maybe playing a Major League Baseball team and they lose, and it just like vaults the everything up further. Because I remember seeing a viral clip of Albert Pujols getting struck out, and he was just like, kind of like, so I don't know. I think there's ways that can sway and make it more viable. And I'm thinking that more here in Kansas City, just watching history unfold, watching this team is the first one with their own stadium becoming this entity now. I just
Yes.
think that, yeah, it's totally plausible. So let me ask you this. Every day you wake up, what is your motivation to not only to be an entrepreneur, but to also evolve as a human being? What's that motivation for you?
I think having seen how important growth was as an athlete and seeing how impactful that was for the journey I was on, that is now just ingrained in my DNA, that how can I grow and improve every single day? And the motivation for me, the thing that gets me out of bed is the impact on others. And every time I connect with a new group, whether it's an executive and their staff, or it's a sport team, or it's a group of coaches. Every time I connect with a group and see that there's an impact, it just reignites that fire and reminds me of, why I do all the monotonous things when I'm back at home and figure out how to get this business off the ground, because I just think there aren't, especially female leaders, there aren't enough females out there spreading the messages and being visible. And I just seeing how far that myself and my teammates got in our lives, watching men's sports on TV, growing up with male coaches, and just thinking about how impactful it is for young girls and women all over to see strong, confident, accomplished women. And so those are the things that get me out of bed in the morning and motivate me to do what I do.
So after this long journey you've been on as an athlete and as an entrepreneur, what are you the proudest of?
I am so proud of our team and stepping onto that podium for the first time for Softball Canada at the Olympics, there's nothing in my life that I can be more proud of than that moment. And our team had, we had a history of losing in the big game. We had a history of just missing out on medals at the Olympics. We had a history of not showing up when it mattered most. And the being a part of that program for 12 years, being a part of the culture shift and the development of leadership within the athletes, and knowing all of the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears that went into building what we built. Literally, there's nothing I could be more proud of than the team stepping up onto that podium and doing it together.
So, as fans and as just kind of the world at large, we hear Olympics, we see all of it, we see it all unfold on TV and just how it all kind of comes together. But as an athlete, what was the most surprising thing about actually getting there and being a part of that entire community?
The most surprising thing, I think it was a very unique experience. In the dining hall, there were partitions up. You couldn't just sit there and chat with people and get to know, athletes from other sports and things like that. I think the most surprising thing might have been walking into the stadium for practice. We got to have a practice. There were two different stadiums we used. We got to have a practice in each of them prior to the game starting. And just the feeling of we're actually here. Like
Yeah,
that, I didn't know that feeling was going to hit me in a practice walking into that stadium. And it was almost an overwhelming feeling
yeah,
that I'm actually living a dream, and this stadium, and wondering what it would have been like had it been packed with fans, and what that experience would have been like. And yeah, navigating that, the COVID times, I think the other interesting or surprising piece of it was it almost didn't feel like the Olympics once we got into the games because the stadium was so quiet, and it almost felt like, does the world even know this is happening right now?
yeah,
So that was another surprising thing. It was almost like walking into the stadium for the first time was the feeling of the Olympics, and then
yeah.
playing the games was like, what, are we playing a softball tournament right now? Like a secret softball tournament?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I remember in Baltimore, there was a lot of riots that were happening one year, and they had to play to an empty stadium. And it was weird because you could hear the announcers during the game because they were projecting. You could hear it from the box. And then when a ball would hit the stands, and it was really weird. Like when there's no one around, it's just, I mean, I remember even with that COVID season in baseball, it was like, wow, this is strange. Just very, very bizarre. Um,
Yes.
so everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, colleagues, clients, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That is such a good question. I think I am a regular person with a passion for impacting others. I think I am a kind and compassionate person with a unique background and experience that allows me to impact the people in the world around me.
So if anyone wants to indulge in your endeavors, learn more about you, reach out, anything about your world, how can they do that?
joey-lye.com, joey-lye.com. There's ways to contact me through my website and a lot more information to pick through for anyone who's interested.
Excellent, Joey. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So